Welcome, dear viewers, to our today's format visit. Today I would like to focus on a focus topic, and the thought came from Antje. Antje is a doctor from Austria, still a student of medicine. Her thoughts touched me very much. She said, "I observe that so many people have iodine deficiency and yet the thyroid gland is not enlarged. In the past, people always talked about iodine deficiency. What is the reason for so many people having iodine deficiency in our time?" This is a topic that has been very important to me for many years. I am very happy that such a young person, who is going to live as a doctor tomorrow, is already dealing with these questions so early. Perhaps this program is also a good opportunity to develop a much larger and more critical view of the causes of illnesses from the very beginning. This is what therapy is all about. We first ask ourselves the question, why? Iodine is the basic component for the production of thyroid hormones. The thyroid has to build the thyroid hormones with tyrosine and iodine, the T4 and T3, and of course it has cofactors. The interesting thing is that iodine has doppelganger similar to iodine. If we look at life today, we have been able to develop a record in the last years and decades that chemical substances compete for sites on these iodine receptors. These are mercury, fluorine, bromine, and chlorine. These are all things that we have already talked about, for example, with fluorine. But thank God we don't have fluorine in our drinking water. This is very different in America. In 1950, there was a claim and it was meant that fluorine would significantly stabilize the gums, which is not the case, but since then the water in America has been fluorine. This has immense consequences for the hormone system, because fluorine has almost the same structure as iodine. This makes a very high blockage and thus reduces the production of thyroid hormones. I myself run a clinic that has a large international clientele. I have noticed that in the last 10 years, almost every second or third American has a Hashimoto's disease or a thyroid dysfunction. It is not always Hashimoto's disease, an autoimmune disease. But if you then also have the receptor occupied and iodine cannot attack, which is responsible for the formation of thyroid hormones, then we are of course quick to say that you have to take thyroid hormones, instead of really researching and asking, are there any body loads that I don't know? Chlorine is contained in all plastics, in many dyes, insecticides, even in paper production. These sales receipt that you always touch, unbelievable, unbelievable. The internet is full of more information. I just want to give you a few thoughts on this. Bromine is a major flame-proof agent. We have it in our upholstery furniture. Bromine is very important as a disinfectant in whirlpools, but also in lemon lemonade or as a baking product. I mean, who thinks about it, in the bakery, in the flour, that there is bromine in it and that everything competes? These are real competition factors. Perchlorate, for example, can also stimulate the iodine absorption process. Perchlorate was used in the past for thyroid overfunctions, to simply stop production on purpose. But that didn't work. People got a fatal aplastic anemia. That means that the bone marrow is slowed down so much that the hemogram has changed a lot. It was then rejected. But this perchlorate is also in fireworks bodies and in industrial chemicals, in wastewater. This of course also gets into the soils, into the fertilizers, and we absorb it through fruit and vegetables. So that's when you ask yourself why or how or what do I have to do, what information should I give people in order to maintain a healthy thyroid tomorrow? Then of course I have to communicate such things with my patients and explain them to them. And what is very important is that I do not use an additional fluorine toothpaste every day. I don't even want to say that I always have to do it, but that I hardly use it. For example, I don't use the ciprofloxacin, which is a fluorine-containing antibiotic. If I need an antibiotic in an emergency, I discuss it with the doctor that it is not fluorine-containing. That I don't consume normal baking goods, that's a drama. I recently had a conversation, no one wants to be a baker anymore, people don't want to get up at 4. The bakery profession, I read in the newspaper that in the 4th or 5th generation, the cafe was closed because they couldn't afford it anymore, they couldn't afford the costs anymore. But the offspring is simply no longer there. And what was called baking bread as a craft back then, everything is made today with ready-made flour. These are extract flours that no longer contain the original grain, which can be kept for a long time. You can now shred and process a grain, you can't keep it for long because of the oily flour body. But it is no longer possible to find this offspring who is ready to get up at 4 in the morning. And that's why it's all industrialized and rationalized. That's why it's so important that today we appeal to eat a pesticide-free vegetable and fruit. Even if these are of course giant fruit plantations. I think, how can I prevent the acid and aluminum-laden rain from going over this plantation? But at least the manufacturers have to certify that they are not working with these things in addition. And that's something we really have to say with great responsibility today, because it doesn't make sense to conduct these things, to recognize them as a danger, but not to draw conclusions. And what is actually so normal, that it has a quality that doesn't hurt me, that's actually really not good at all, that we have to emphasize that. There are 3 organic apples 1,000 times more honest than a kilo, where every apple was sprayed 20 times. Because the body is so slowly overwhelmed with all these things. Bromine is also contained in the whole plastic bags. Plastic takes, hold on, 350 years to be dismantled. We have a situation today where this paper alone, or this substance, this paper plastic cup from Starbucks, takes 50 years to be dismantled. We have waste deposits in the seas today, which have grown from 4.8 to 12.7 million tons per year. And we have a yield of plastic today of 80 million in the seas. They can't be picked up economically either. But the fact is that the fish and the corals and all the sea creatures are highly polluted with it. The giant tank, the giant fishing nets that simply stay back when such nets have been dismantled, take 600 years. I don't even know where to start, but we don't have to start. We just have to understand that our body is like an empty cup and that we fill this cup with drops every day. Whether it's the plastic container that's made of Tupperware and I put the rest of the food in there to store it in the fridge. Or whether it's the plastic container that I put in the microwave. I hope none of you use a microwave. Or whether it's the PET bottle itself. Or whether it's the fluorine toothpaste. I just want to say that this empty cup in the symbolism of my body is filled every day. And what remains for us in this civilization? We are only conscious on the one hand to reduce these toxins. And I can only appeal to each and every one of you to buy a nice shopping basket again. Or to have a basket on my bike where I put everything in. Or to have my shopping bag in my handbag or my backpack. But by no means, if you take a plastic bag from me, take this plastic bag. Because in business or in trade, it's about supply and demand. And at some point, production may be limited because it needs to be rethought. I'm 63 years old, which means I'm responsible for this development. But I can no longer agree with my deep conscience that I continue to provoke these things in a dramatic way. And believe me, it's not that easy because everyday life is limited to it. And there is no question of sustainability. Everything has emigrated. There is only glass or thermos, aluminum or stainless steel, not aluminum. But that's in a clinic or in a practice where we are used to these one-way injections. Where we produce huge amounts of waste ourselves. That's a lot for me. It takes a lot of effort. And maybe I'm the one who starts spraying glass again tomorrow. To clean, to sterilize. And take out a glass container with a metal lid with a corresponding pair of pliers. That's how I grew up before and during my studies. It was all natural. Every hospital had its own sterilization. What we thought at first is no longer acceptable today. And all the civilizational diseases that are pathological due to these nanoparticles, these plastic particles. And also diseases fossilized in a dimension. Even alone through the fish, through the sea fish, through the seals. That's why there are so many Eskimos and civilizations that are actually not affected by this high industrialization on site. These are things that naturally come back to us humans. And here, especially in the field of thyroid gland, of course, there are a lot of health consequences. That means I can only influence these things by myself. By not buying these PET bottles anymore, for example. By having my water examined. What is in there, and buy a water filter that filters my main water supply. Not only the tap of the water I drink, but also of what I use for myself when I shower or bathe. I also have to shower when I was in the swimming pool and bathed in a chlorine water. All the air filters. It's incredible what we're registering in air pollution. That means there are filters. We have these big air filters in our clinic, especially in the context of all the microbial pollution and so on. But these are things that are fundamentally important today in the context of air pollution. And not only by the printers, but also by the environment, by air pollution outside. With open windows, this is also a problem of air pollution inside. What do you think is leaking out of there? It's also from formaldehyde, through all the carpet materials, through the flameproofing agents, through the formaldehyde. All of IKEA's goods are heavily polluted with formaldehyde. And these Herber air filter high-efficiency particular air filter. These are American patents, but there are also a large number in Europe. That means, there are sometimes things like that when I live in a city, when I live on a main road. Then these are things that are sometimes really valuable, especially in the bedroom and also in the living room. Yes, I see this table water. I call it table water when I use it myself from my tap. That I fill it up in glass bottles myself. You know, health is a question of your own consciousness. And we don't have to come from above and work with fear and think we can protect ourselves from anything. That's complete nonsense. Risk and benefit are to be weighed there. That what remains of oxygen under such a closure here and the exhaled air is inhaled. That it is unbelievable what studies and what results lie ahead of us. That we are here by fatigue, by concentration disorder, by poor blood circulation, by a lack of willingness to stay awake. That today we do all things to the extent. There are completely different things than we have to be interested in this toxin pressure, whether it is microbial or toxic due to the environment. And the other thing is, of course, when we are burdened, that we really try medically. They call it polymorphism, that we also let ourselves be genetically examined. Can we detoxify? Are we a faster detoxifier? Are we a slower detoxifier? Are we a slow, delayed detoxifier? Are we zero detoxifier? Do we have a receptor weakness at the folic acid receptor? MTHFR is called that. That means, then the inactive folic acid cannot be converted into the active one. But these are so important biochemical structural processes that are responsible for each cell can detoxify itself. One is the intoxication and the other is that my body, due to its deficiency. And we see that damn often, and I dare to claim that we also develop something like that because of the toxicity. We have to make sure of the doctrinage. And if we don't have enough selenium, that's a trace element that the soils don't even absorb anymore. Then we shouldn't be surprised that we don't detoxify, that we don't get rid of the bromine, the chlorine, the phthalates, the softener, the mercury. Alone with selenium, 200 micrograms of sodium selenium a day, you are on an incredibly good side. Of course, detoxification also needs B vitamins, it needs zinc, it needs glutathione. And glutathione, the precursor, is, for example, the cysteine, the L-cysteine, which we use as a solmicol when we cough. But it's not about the solution of the mucus removal, but about the glutathione. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Antje, that you asked this question. That you, as a future young colleague, are already starting to ask questions and look for answers. I think many people today are very grateful to you that we may have addressed a topic that makes us all a little bit more attentive and more vigilant. Maybe in 50 years, thank God, it will be very normal, but maybe we have also managed to slowly, really on a political level, to draw a line, to find a little more modesty. And that commitment, also for each individual, for oneself, but much more important for others and for the future and for what our children may expect tomorrow, Mother Earth, to meet in a satisfaction that actually gives us so much space for life and so much beauty to be able to be happy here. And a lot of thinking is required. And it's wonderful when doctors of tomorrow open up to these questions and we can discuss these things today. In this sense, I wish you a wonderful week from the bottom of my heart, and I'm looking forward to the next show with you. Please feel free to send your questions to Visite at QS24.tv by email. I would like to be able to answer them. I'm very happy about that, but I think you can feel that in this sense. All the best.